This time on Captain Chaos's Laboratory, we're going to be working on a Mr. Christmas World's Fair Carousel. It's an itty bitty guy in relationship to other carousels. And this one is 15 volts DC, which is, that's actually pretty high. But here's the problem, turn it on. So not all the lights are working and it sounds horrible. And the music doesn't work. I'm going to turn it off because it sounds horrible. Alright, so here's the bottom. It says Mr. Christmas, 15 volts DC, 400 milliamps. Date code is L29. I don't know what the date code means as far as what year this is. I don't think the box doesn't really say anything either. It says the same thing on all the sides as far as what it does, except it gives you the playlist of songs on the back. So let's open her up and see what's going on. See if we can get it to spin and light up. I can never guarantee the sound because if the chip is fried, you get no sound. So, like all carousels, you got to work the top off like that, and there's a screw, but there's something loose in here. Apparently, it's been opened at one point because there's a washer that's supposed to be underneath that screw. And that's probably why that was able to pop out, because it was not glued back in, which I recommend not to begin with. That way you can take it off in the future and not tear the fabric, since Mr. Christmas uses real fabric. Alright, there's that, and there's the screw. It does have 6 clips underneath the lip. So I'm going to use a small screwdriver to start popping the clips. There we go. There's the motor. There's the speaker. I'm going to say the reason it's not working is there's no belt. That's gone. Looks like this whole assembly is held on with just that nut. So let's remove the nut and break the glue free so I have some slack on the wires. This glue is nice and new. It's not yellowed, so I'm going to assume, like I said, I'm going to assume it's been worked on before, because that glue is yellowed and that glue is clear. Alright, glue's off. Hopefully there's enough slack I can get this out and see underneath. Okay. So the belt is right there wrapped around the drag pulley. There's the belt, vulcanized and snapped and wrapped around itself. So as far as this part goes, that's pretty simple. You just undo that nut, lift this up. If you feed the wire off to the side for the speaker, you have enough room to get in there. So while I have it up, I'm going to look in this slot here, which was right there. And I'm going to check the gears real quick. I think the noise I heard, or we all heard, was the this spinning and slapping the plastic. Gears look good. They actually look newer than the rest of this. Yep. It's all the way around. Now we need to find a belt. That belt should work. Slide her on down. Wire is supposed to be in a groove that they have in the plastic, and it has apparently come out. Let's try and get this back in. There's an actual notch in the plastic where the wires can slip over the piece. There we go. Now let's see, will it go on? Want to go back on. There we go. Alright, so it's back in the groove. Let's make sure the wires aren't damaged. Wires look good. Put the nut on it to hold it down, and let's plug it in and see if we get the rotation back. And now we have sound too. It's really quiet though. I think the amplifier chip may have failed. But these lights aren't working. Let's check the rest. It's just these. Trying to put a mark so when I turn it off I know which wires I'm going to resolder. Right there. I'm wondering if it's just a bad solder joint. Now to get to the computer board, you have to take this back off. You have to desolder these 4 wires, so the 2 for the speaker, the 2 for the motor. Mark at least one side so you know the polarity, so you don't reverse them because they don't spin backwards. And then lift this whole thing off and set it off to the side, and your circuitry is down below. Your speaker is up here. The speaker feels okay. Not crunchy. Touch up these solder joints and see if that's the problem with these lights. That one's going to be a little harder. Got a little bit of a rat's nest. There we go. These lights are on. Some are brighter than others, but they're all on again. So it's a bad solder joint. Do not know why the music's so quiet though. Let's see what we can find out. So I'm going to paint this side of the motor. I'm going to paint this wire. I'm going to paint this wire. And that side of the speaker. Let's check the circuit board. So this is a relatively easy one to get into, which is nice. The fact that you only have one screw and one nut to get to the working parts is absolutely amazing. Very simplistic. Now, I'm going to try and lift the drum off, which does not have notches for the wires. So that means we need to pull the wires out the bottom. So on the very bottom, there's your wires. And that's why they have this deep hole. That's how they feed it up. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, putting them back in is going to be interesting. So let's see if we can get these wires to feed. There's those. I'm going to try my hardest not to pull them all the way in, just leave a little bit hanging out, so I grab them with some pliers. Here's our circuitry. So the rotor that sends the power up is on the bottom. Right there. And that is really shiny, really clean, and has almost no grooves in it. So this didn't get used a lot. Here's our main circuit board. So here's our power, our off-on switch, our year switch for Christmas or all year round music, our push the button for a new song, and our volume knob. So those are the circuit boards in a row. This is the main board that does everything else. piece of foam under here. So there we go. There's your blob chip. And you have a whole bunch of discrete components. There's your amplifier chip for the music, which might be the failure point. Let's take some magnifying specs and take a gander at what we got. Nothing is standing out. Oh no, we got a bad resistor. I don't even know what that resistor goes to. Let's see. Looks like a bad resistor. This one right yar. Appears to be burnt. Where is the pokey thing? There's a pokey thing. Never mind, it's not burnt. It's the adhesive that leaked from the capacitor when they glued the capacitor on. They glued the capacitor to the board. My bad, it's not burnt. So either the amplifier chip has failed, or possibly the volume knob. Or this just isn't a very loud unit, which is also possible. Looks like there's been new stuff taken care of, because this is new solder right in here. The rest of the solder has got a matte silver appearance, and then these three solder joints are shiny silver, and so is that one. So it has been repaired. And those three solder joints here are a resistor. Nope, those are the wires that go to the volume switch. Of the three wires, two of them are connected. So I'm going to bring this up to you. We're looking at these right here. So those three dots are the three wires right here that go to this. These two on the ends are touching, so they're bridged. And based on the solder tracks, they shouldn't be bridged. Meaning that these, if you're not familiar with circuit boards, this light green is the conductive part. This dark green, these little lines, is the isolator, meaning there's no conductivity. So each one of these three dots is on three different conductive pads, and two of them are touching. So that might be our volume issue. But I also want to check this one, which is also touching, but they're on the same pad, so that's fine. And this capacitor got hot at one point. This capacitor goes to the white wire, which the white wires go to the speaker. So I'll show you that too. That insulation, or that's a plastic coating with the information of the capacitor, is attached to the casing. Anyway, the casing plastic is melted. So I'm not sure if it got hot, or if when they soldered this, if they didn't accidentally touch the casing. I can't tell, because the solder on here is still the same. But you might be able to see the difference with the matte versus the shiny. I don't know. In the viewfinder, it's really hard to tell. But anyhow, that could be the issue. So I'm going to break the bridge. And I'm going to probably test the capacitance on this capacitor. This capacitor is 470 microfarads. So my soldering iron heats back up. Well, this multimeter doesn't have capacitance, so let's use my other one. I have to switch the leads because the other one has a broken lead. That's why I haven't been using it in the more recent videos. And I can't find my spare set of leads. I usually buy a dozen at a time. So now we're going to go all the way over to capacitance. There we go. .19 nanofarads. My soldering gun's up the temperature. Get this out of the way. Bear with me for a second. I need to check to see if 4.19 nano farads is in micro. Well, it's 400, well, it's 419 microfarads. That's what I thought. So 470, if it was at 10% tolerance, that would be, it's in tolerance, just really close to the bottom edge of the tolerance. Let's fix the wiring and see if we get sound. Let's fix the wiring here, the bridge. Just get rid of that bridge. There we go. So capacitor still within tolerance. Yeah. Grease. Let's check the wheel. I want to check the wheel to see if it's corroded on the underside. Wheel is clean, so there's no corrosion. Almost looks like a brand new circuit board on the bottom. Top doesn't, but the bottom does. And the wheel feels good. I don't feel any crunchiness or sticking. It's really smooth. So let's put this thing back together and plug in a speaker. There's a ball of solder on the end. I'm going to remove that. And I'm going to have to pull a little bit more of the white wire back through. That should do. There we go. If all goes well, I should be able to use some needle nose and pull out the wire. There's the white. feed it from the bottom. There we go. There's the white. There's the green. There we go. Trying to get the wires into their respective notches. I need a little bit of an angle on it so I can see it better. Alrighty. Let's solder a speaker on and see if the sound's any better. I'm just going to tin the wires. I'm not going to do the motor, but I am going to make sure they're not touching, because then that's considered a dead short. That's tough on the circuit board, and it has a tendency of causing other issues like nothing works. Nope, still quiet. It's on. Possibly a bad amplifier chip. Capacitor is within tolerance. The resistor is not bad. It's quiet though. I wish most of them were this quiet, truthfully. So let's get the spinning part done here. See, where's my black wire? Right there. This thing should start spinning pretty much immediately. Crap, the cord. Let's try to keep the cord out of it. How about that? There we go. Now when the display this goes in, it normally doesn't play music, but the music is on. It's just really quiet compared to the other ones. Make sure all the lights are still working. But the horses are backwards. So somehow I soldered the wires backwards. Yeah, I even marked them and I soldered them backwards. That's pretty good. That's what's nice about a lot of this. If you do that, like I just did, just reverse the wires. I've actually had a few people message that says they replaced their motor, especially on the Emacs where they come with the pigtails of red and black, and when they put them in, it's spun backwards. It's like just reverse the wires. They're like it's black to red, red to black. It just means that the original motor winding inside was reversed from the new motor winding. So that's a very nice feature that you can do, and it's always good to test because everybody makes mistakes, as you saw I just did. Even with my magnifiers, I couldn't see the marker. I wiped a lot of it off my fingers because they're greasy, and what I thought was black was just a smudge from my fingers. So on this one, we had bad belt and a bad solder joint and a bridged wire, which could have ultimately caused it to fail because the bridge wire would cause extra current on one of the legs that is not supposed to be there, and it's very, very possible it may have damaged the amplifier chip. Some amplifier chips are still replaceable. I will talk to the person that owns this and see if they care, because I've seen their display and they don't really play the music on their pieces because they have their own soundtrack, because it's a big Christmas display with Village inside of it. There you go. So in the meantime, I'm going to reassemble it and then I'm going to send them a message. Now to test your amplifier chip, you need a multimeter. Not a voltmeter, an actual multimeter like what I use. And you need to be able to test voltage and frequency. And then you have to look the chip number up, get the diagram online, which generally isn't too hard, most of them are still available. And then do the pinouts for the speaker. And once you do that, you just check what kind of voltage you get and then the frequency. There we go. You see the lights are on. The horses are now spinning in the right direction. So if you have this piece, it's relatively easy to take apart. All you got to do is pop the top, pull the screw, pop the 6 clips. There's 6, 1, 2, 3, 6. And then you have access to the mechanism on top. You can replace the belt without desoldering anything, which is a great feature. But if you need to get down to the lower mechanism to clean corrosion, check your components, you will have to desolder the 2 wires on the motor, the 2 wires on the speaker, mark them so you know which one goes where. And even in my case, it didn't matter. I still screwed up one of the 2. And then you can check the bottom. The motor that's in here is readily available. You can get it from Suntronics out of Florida, which is Happy Holidays Parts. That's plural holidays and plural parts. And he carries the motors. They're little 6-volt motors that look like this. There's a part number on them, so you can actually find them anywhere you'd like that sells motors. They're a very common motor in Mr. Christmas, and I've come across 1 or 2 Department 56s that have had the same motor, but it's not very common in them. But Mr. Christmas loves that motor. They also run at a much higher power. There's a large resistor on that circuit board. That large resistor goes to the motor to power it down. That motor can handle more than 6 volts. It's just listed as a 6 volt. It can actually handle, most of them can handle 9 to 12 at the max, and that's probably why this has a resistor to power it down. If you spun this thing at 15 volts, it would spin really fast compared to what it's doing right now, just a standard carousel speed. So at the moment, this one's done. We'll talk with him and see what he wants to do about the volume. Knowing him, probably nothing, because again, he doesn't use volume, just like I don't use volume in my display. So, but at least to give you an idea how to use this piece, or excuse me, how to access this piece so you can make it usable if it doesn't. The motor is available. The belt is readily available. The belt I use comes from Skull Crane. And the gears are available. All the gears that are in that top piece are basically in the standard hobby kits that you can get from Amazon or Skull Crane. Amazon will have most of all the gears. Skull Crane will just have the specialty drive gears. So the kits are different. These LEDs, if they burn out, you can get them, but they're a pain to solder back on. But if you have a panel that's not working, check the solder joints. And the solder joint on the inside down low that was hard to get to, that was the reason why that one panel didn't work. Solder joint had just cracked. So once you remove the base, you can access the circuit board, check the components. Luckily, this is old enough. Most of the components in here have the part numbers on them. A lot of the new ones, they scratch off the chip number, or they put so much glue on the components when you peel the glue off, it peels the label off of the capacitors, as an example, or the ink. So you have no idea what it's supposed to be if it's burnt. Resistors just use color codes. Unless they're surface mount, then they'll have a number on the top. These are all standard resistors with color bands. And the transistors, the markings are usually etched into the plastic, with some are filled with paint, some aren't. But you can usually read those and figure out what they are if they need to be replaced. Normally, when you lose a component on the board, it has a tendency of backfeeding the blob chip, at which point you will lose your blob chip. And usually on the blob chip, the first thing to go out is the sound, second thing to go out is the lights. And that's just the way the circuitry works, because they all have a common leg, and it takes the shortest or least resistive path first to do damage. All paths will have electricity, but the least resistive will have the most, and that's usually the speaker or sound part of your blob chip. Blob chip I know is working because we have sound. It's just not as loud as Mr. Christmas normally is. It's probably 1/3 the normal volume of Mr. Christmas. And again, it may have been a quieter piece. I don't know. I will ask him and see if he remembers, and then ask him if he wants to research further, or if he just wants to use it as a lit rotating piece like the majority of his villages. So at the moment, this is where we're at. So it's a shorter video, thank God, and hopefully it'll help you if you have this World's Fair Carousel from the Gold Label collection of Mr. Christmas. So until the next video, have a good one.